In the endless dark of space, stars blinked like distant lanterns, quiet and cold. Ships glided through the void, their hulls shining against the black, yet everywhere across the galaxy there was an unsettling silence. For decades, civilizations had traded, explored, and connected. But suddenly the connection stopped. Messages went unanswered. Trade convoys vanished. Every planet, every colony, every spaceport had shut its gates. Walls of fear rose higher than the tallest spires. Borders that had once seemed imaginary now loomed like steel and stone. On Earth, people watched the skies with growing unease. The news stations reported fleets denied entry to friendly worlds, refugees drifting from system to system, and colonies abandoned because no one dared to help. Even the most technologically advanced planets, ones that had built fleets capable of crushing entire civilizations, had locked themselves behind gates of fear. The galaxy, once a vibrant web of life and light, had become a silent, suffocating place. Dr. Leora Vance sat at the edge of a wide observation window in New Chicago, gazing at the glowing Earth below and the scattered stars above. Her fingers tapped nervously on the metal railing. She had studied languages, diplomacy, and the ways of the galaxy for most of her life, yet nothing in her training had prepared her for this silence. Her eyes, tired but determined, traced the paths of distant vessels that were now gone. "Why are they all hiding?" she whispered to herself. Her voice felt small, swallowed by the emptiness of space. It was not that humanity was unafraid. Earth had its own problems, its own fears, its own scars. But fear had not hardened humans into isolation. It had never been in our nature to shut doors when someone else needed help. Leora had seen the generosity of ordinary people, the way children shared food, the way strangers offered shelter even in hard times. And now, when the galaxy itself had turned its back, Earth had a choice: follow the others into isolation or stand alone and open its arms. Reports continued to arrive. A transport from the system of Carthara was stranded near a deserted station. A small colony on the icy moons of Theris was running out of oxygen. Ships full of refugees drifted, waiting for permission they would never receive. The Council of Worlds, a once respected body of galactic governance, had decided in unison: no one would help. Humanity could not believe it. They had tried to appeal through messages, envoys, and even emergency transmissions. Nothing. Every world had shut its gates. Every world, that is, except Earth. Leora's mind wandered to the stories of humanity's past. Tales of explorers crossing oceans when storms raged, of villages opening their doors to strangers during famines, of soldiers protecting the helpless even at the cost of their lives. Humanity had never needed to be the strongest in the galaxy, only the most compassionate. And now, as other worlds retreated into fear, Earth could rise as a beacon. Her communicator beeped. A priority message from the United Earth Council blinked on her console. The message carried news that a refugee vessel, badly damaged, had appeared in orbit without warning. It was carrying hundreds of lives, families, children, elders, all turned away by every other world. Leora swallowed hard. Her heart clenched at the thought of so many beings, so desperate and afraid, drifting in the cold void with no one willing to help. She knew what Earth must do. Not walls, not weapons, not fleets designed for dominance, but arms. Arms wide open, welcoming, embracing. The decision would not be easy. Resources were limited. Hospitals were crowded. Food supplies could stretch only so far. And yet, the principle was simple. When every world closes its gates, one world can choose to act with courage and love. That choice could change everything. As night fell over New Chicago, Leora walked to the observation deck once more. The city lights twinkled like stars fallen to Earth, warm and alive in contrast to the cold cosmos. She could imagine the faces of those stranded in space, their eyes searching for hope, their hearts heavy with fear. "We will not let you drift alone," she whispered. "Earth will not turn away. Not now, not ever." Below her, the streets were alive with people preparing for the unknown. Scientists and engineers worked to repair emergency shuttles. Volunteers packed supplies into cargo bays. Children held glowing lanterns in public squares, a symbol of hope that even the darkest night could not extinguish. Humanity had always been small in the galaxy, fragile even, yet capable of something far greater than fear. Somewhere, far beyond the nearest star, an alien child clutched a worn toy, looking at the galaxy's gates that had slammed shut. They did not know it yet, but Earth's arms would reach them, and for the first time in a long while, Across the cold silence of space, hope began to spread. The galaxy had chosen silence. Every world had closed its doors. But Earth, tiny and fragile, would rise as a beacon. It would remind the stars that fear could be resisted, that compassion could be stronger than warships and walls. And somewhere deep in the heart of humanity, Leora felt a quiet, powerful certainty. The first light of a new era was about to shine. The alarm lights at Earth's orbital spaceport blinked urgently, but the air was electric with purpose, not panic. A battered vessel, its hull scorched and dented, had appeared from nowhere. Sensors reported hundreds of life signs: weak, frightened, desperate. Leora Vance rushed to the control center, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. She knew in that moment that humanity was about to be tested in ways no one had ever imagined. The ship was from Zephyria, a system that had recently fallen into chaos. Its engines had barely survived a skirmish with raiders, and its life support systems were failing. Families clutched their children. Elders leaned on whatever support they could find. For many, this was the first time they had seen another living being in months or even years. Most worlds had turned them away. Every other gate in the galaxy had slammed shut. Earth's response was immediate. Volunteers ran to the orbital docks carrying medkits, blankets, and food. Engineers scrambled to stabilize the ship, their hands moving with precision despite the tension. Soldiers escorted families not with weapons drawn in threat, but in protection and reassurance. Leora watched from above, her chest tight, as humanity's true nature unfolded before her eyes. Children cried softly, and then cautiously, as if afraid that kindness was just another trick. A Zephyrian boy no older than 7 held a small cracked toy in one hand and his mother's hand in the other. When a human girl knelt down and offered him a small packet of food, his eyes widened in disbelief. Slowly, a hesitant smile broke across his face. That smile, fragile but real, made Leora's throat ache with emotion. Refugees were carefully guided to the newly constructed shelters on Earth's surface. The buildings were not luxurious, they were temporary, functional, but they were warm, safe, and filled with people who cared. Doctors tended to the sick, volunteers cleaned and organized, and children were given toys, books, and simple comforts to remind them that life could still be gentle. Leora moved among them, introducing herself in broken Zephyrian and gestures, trying to ease fear with words of welcome. She held the hand of an elderly Zephyrian woman, whose legs had grown weak after months of hiding, her eyes brimming with tears. "You are safe now," Leora whispered. "You are not alone anymore." But even as hope began to bloom, the weight of reality pressed down. Resources were limited. Food supplies were being rationed. Medical teams were stretched thin. Tensions rose between humans and refugees in small, quiet ways. A child accidentally knocked over a stack of food supplies and a scuffle almost broke out. Yet these moments were fleeting, overtaken by acts of kindness. A young engineer lending extra blankets, a teacher organizing lessons for children, a volunteer calming fears with soft songs. It was not just humanity helping. They were learning from the refugees as well. Zephyrian families shared knowledge of star systems, of engineering tricks, of cultural songs and stories. Humans and aliens began to laugh together, sharing small moments of joy amidst the uncertainty. Leora watched a group of teenagers, human and Zephyrian, tossing a ball across the courtyard. The ball bounced unevenly, the younger ones tripped and fell, but they laughed and got up again, their laughter spilling into the air like music. At night, the orbital observatory transmitted images of the newly arrived ships to the world. Earth citizens stared in awe as the first refugees descended. Messages poured in from across the planet, offers of shelter, supplies, and support. People sang together on city streets, lit lanterns in parks, and held vigils for those still drifting alone in space. Humanity's arms had opened, and for the first time in months, the galaxy's silence was pierced by a chorus of hope. Even Leora felt the exhaustion settle into her bones. She returned to her office, reviewing reports of incoming ships and supplies. Her hands trembled, but her heart was full. Every life saved was a victory. Every smile returned a triumph. And she knew this was only the beginning. Humanity had chosen compassion over fear. And for the first time in a long time, she believed that choice could change everything. Outside, the stars shone brightly, indifferent yet beautiful. Somewhere out there, fleets waited in silent systems and countless beings still drifted, unseen and unclaimed. But Earth had begun to answer the call. One ship at a time, one life at a time, hope was returning to the galaxy, and in the quiet moments between the chaos, Leora allowed herself a small smile. The galaxy may have closed its gates, but Earth had opened its arms, and for the first time in generations, someone, somewhere, felt safe again. Word of Earth's open arms spread quickly across the galaxy. At first it was whispers, stray messages intercepted by scanners, rumors traveling along trade routes. Then the Council of Worlds, the ancient governing body that oversaw interstellar affairs, took notice. Their reaction was swift and severe. Earth was defying protocol. Earth was breaking the rules. Every other planet had obeyed, sealing their gates to refugees, shutting out fear and chaos. And yet Earth continued to welcome them. In the grand halls of the United Earth Council, leaders argued late into the night. Messages from distant colonies arrived, describing more refugees, more ships drifting in, more families in need. "We cannot afford this," said Admiral Kale, his voice low and tense. "Our resources are limited. Our people are already stretched thin. If we continue, famine, disease, even civil unrest may follow." Leora Vance stood at the edge of the council chamber, her eyes scanning the worried faces of ministers and generals. She had come to plead, not to fight. "We are not just defending a planet," she said quietly, her voice carrying more weight than she had expected. "We are defending hope. Every being we take in now may one day save lives elsewhere. If we close our gates, we will become like every other world, fearful, small, and cruel. If we open them, we will show the galaxy that compassion is not weakness, it is strength." The debate raged for hours. Some ministers argued for closure, citing disease, supply shortages, and political pressure from alien allies. Others looked to Leora's words, remembering humanity's history, the stories of courage and kindness that had defined their species. Finally, after endless discussion, the vote was taken. Earth would not close its gates. Humanity would continue to embrace the weary, the lost, the unwanted. But the galaxy did not accept this decision easily. Within weeks, messages of warning arrived. High-ranking members of the council issued ultimatums. "Turn them away or face consequences," they said. Fleet commanders positioned ships near Earth's orbit, their weapons ready, their intent clear. The message was simple: compliance or destruction. Despite the looming threat, life on Earth continued. Refugees arrived daily, their numbers growing steadily. Engineers and volunteers worked tirelessly to expand shelters, repair ships, and transport supplies. Humanity's arms were full, yet they never closed. Mothers soothed crying children, soldiers carried the weak, and scientists collaborated with alien refugees to solve problems no single world could face alone. Leora spent her days coordinating aid and her nights watching the stars. She thought about the countless civilizations that had turned away, each gate shut like a fist. She thought about the refugees who had arrived, each one a fragile life clinging to hope. And she thought about the fleet waiting beyond the horizon, their weapons pointed, ready to enforce the galaxy's fear. One evening, as the sun dipped below Earth's horizon, Leora walked along the crowded streets of New Chicago. Children played in parks with alien friends, sharing stories, games, and laughter. Families, human and alien alike, prepared meals together. Volunteers distributed supplies to those in need. And above all, there was hope, a stubborn, burning hope that refused to be snuffed out by fear. Her communicator buzzed. "Another fleet, another warning, this time more urgent." "Earth," the voice demanded, "you must comply. Stop your aid or you will face military action." Leora took a deep breath. She looked around at the city she loved, at the people who had chosen kindness despite uncertainty. She felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders, yet also the warmth of purpose filling her heart. "We will not stop," she said into the communicator, her voice steady and unyielding. "We will protect the innocent. We will care for the lost. We will not become like every other world. We will be better." The Council of Worlds was shocked. They had expected hesitation, fear, maybe even surrender. They did not expect defiance rooted not in pride, not in military strength, but in compassion. Earth had chosen a different path, one that no one had anticipated. That night, as Leora returned to her office, she looked out at the stars once more. Somewhere out there, fleets hovered in waiting. Somewhere, countless beings were still adrift, hoping for a place to belong. And somewhere, the galaxy had begun to notice that Earth was not afraid. The small blue planet, fragile and limited in power, had made a choice. It had chosen courage over fear, compassion over compliance, love over indifference. And in doing so, it had begun to shine brighter than any weapon or fortress in the galaxy. For the first time in generations, the stars seemed a little warmer, a little more alive. And in the quiet of the night, Leora allowed herself a moment to imagine what could come next. A galaxy reminded of the strength in kindness, a civilization that could rise above fear, and a world whose arms had opened when all others had closed. The days turned into weeks and the weeks into months. Earth's skies were busier than ever. Ships from distant systems arrived daily, some damaged, some barely holding together, all carrying passengers who had nowhere else to go. The planet's people worked tirelessly to meet the growing demand. Hospitals were overflowing, food supplies stretched to their limits. Schools turned into temporary shelters. Streets once quiet with routine now hummed with the energy of a world in motion. For some, the strain was almost unbearable. Humans whispered in corners, worried that Earth's generosity would bring ruin. There were arguments over resources, disagreements about who should get priority, and fears of disease spreading. But even amidst exhaustion and uncertainty, humanity's core strength shone brighter than fear. Compassion. Volunteers moved tirelessly, often working long past exhaustion, driven not by duty alone but by a deep, unshakable belief that no life should be abandoned. In the midst of chaos, Leora Vance walked among the people. She saw exhausted parents carrying children to shelters, engineers repairing shuttles without sleep, and doctors treating wounds both physical and emotional. She watched as humans and alien refugees worked side by side, building shelters, preparing meals, and caring for the sick. Every day she saw small acts of kindness, a human handing a blanket to a shivering Tharnian, a Zephyrian teaching a human child to read, a young girl offering a toy to a frightened alien toddler. And yet there were moments of heartbreak. Families who had been separated during their journey searched desperately for one another. Some refugees, traumatized by months of fear and loss, refused food or medicine. Others cried silently in corners, unable to speak, their sorrow too heavy to express. Leora held their hands, whispered words of comfort, and reminded herself that hope could still grow even in the smallest moments of light. Despite the strain, Earth became a place of wonder and connection. Children from different worlds played together, their laughter ringing across parks and plazas. Music filled the air as aliens and humans shared songs from their home worlds. Scientists, engineers, and doctors collaborated to solve problems no single species could tackle alone. Sharing knowledge freely, learning from one another, Leora often paused to watch these moments, feeling a quiet pride swell in her chest. Even in hardship, life persisted. Even in difficulty, hope flourished. One evening, Leora visited the newly built orbital refuge hub, where families who had arrived weeks ago now lived in relative safety. She watched a Zephyrian boy no more than 8 play with a human girl, their laughter mingling like wind through the trees. Nearby, an elder Tharnian told stories of his home world to a group of curious children, and volunteers brought trays of warm food for everyone. The scene was simple, yet it held profound beauty. Life was fragile, yet it endured. Fear had not won. Compassion had triumphed. Even in the midst of this hope, the world was not without tension. Some humans voiced frustration, feeling that the aliens had taken too much, that Earth could not handle the influx forever. And yet these moments of doubt were fleeting, drowned out by acts of generosity, bravery, and love. People worked past fear, past fatigue, past worry, because they knew that the cost of turning away was far greater than any hardship they could face. Leora often thought about the galaxy beyond Earth. Other worlds had shut their gates, hiding behind fear and suspicion, and yet from her window, looking at the glowing lights of New Chicago, she felt the unmistakable power of one small planet's choice. The decision to open Earth's arms had created ripples of hope, courage, and connection that reached farther than any fleet of warships ever could. The first quiet moments of night brought reflection. Leora sat on the observation deck gazing at the stars. Ships drifted slowly in orbit, carrying families who had once been lost in the darkness of space. Children slept peacefully in their temporary homes. Volunteers cleaned, cooked, and prepared for another day. And Leora, exhausted but filled with purpose, allowed herself to imagine the future. A galaxy where doors could open again, where hope could flourish, where compassion could be contagious. In that quiet moment, she realized something vital. The strain was real, the work was hard, and the challenges were far from over. But humanity's strength was not in weapons or power. It was in the ability to endure, to care, and to act when others would turn away. Every small act of kindness, every shared meal, every rescued life was proof that even in the darkest times, hope could thrive. And so Earth continued. The planet endured the strain, not because it had to, but because it had chosen to. Humans and aliens together built a fragile but shining world of hope. And for the first time in generations, the galaxy had a glimpse of what was possible when fear was cast aside, and compassion became the guiding force. The calm of Earth's orbit shattered one morning with the roar of alien engines. A fleet, massive and imposing, appeared on the edge of the solar system. Their ships gleamed with cold metal, weapons bristling like the claws of some interstellar predator. Communication channels buzzed with urgent messages, demanding that Earth close its gates immediately or face annihilation. Compliance or destruction, the Admiral's voice thundered across every frequency. Panic could have spread, but it did not. Humanity had faced fear before and had survived. On Earth's surface, people worked faster, their movements sharp with purpose. Scientists prepared defense systems, volunteers strengthened shelters, and medics organized emergency triage stations. Citizens who had never touched a weapon before learned quickly to operate emergency shields and evacuation protocols. And yet, even as they prepared for the worst, Leora Vance reminded them of why they stood firm. "We do not fight because we hate," she said, her voice steady and clear. "We fight to protect those who cannot protect themselves. We fight to give hope a chance to survive." Her words rippled through the crowds, calming panic, igniting courage. The first warning shots came without ceremony. Bright bursts of energy that tore through empty space, missing Earth's orbital satellites by meters. The message was clear. This fleet would not tolerate resistance. Earth's defenses were ready, though not fully armed. The planet itself was not a military power compared to the fleets arrayed above. But Earth had something no weapon could measure: determination. Volunteers and refugees alike worked together, evacuating civilians from orbital stations, guiding families to safe shelters, and providing first aid to those caught in minor blasts. Leora watched as a young human girl pulled a trembling Zephyrian boy behind cover, whispering words of reassurance. Nearby, a group of engineers redirected power to emergency shields, their hands shaking but precise, saving hundreds of lives in a matter of minutes. The alien fleet advanced closer, testing Earth's resolve with precise yet non-lethal strikes. Each shot was a reminder of the consequences of defiance, but each act of humanity's compassion in response was a message of resistance. They were not strong because of weapons. They were strong because they refused to abandon those in need. From the command deck of Earth's Central Orbital Station, Leora coordinated relief and rescue operations. Every incoming ship was tracked, every signal monitored, every life considered precious. And yet, in the midst of chaos, small victories shone brightly. A group of children rescued from a damaged Zephyrian shuttle waved to the rescuers, their eyes wide with wonder and relief. A family reunited after weeks of separation hugged tightly, tears spilling freely. Hours turned into days. The fleet had expected Earth to collapse under pressure, but it did not. Every attempt to intimidate the planet met with compassion and courage. Civilians continued to care for refugees. Volunteers continued to organize relief. Humanity and the newcomers alike worked as one, creating a living shield not of steel or plasma but of hope and determination. Leora, exhausted beyond measure, stood at the observation deck, watching the alien ships orbit above. Despite the threat, she allowed herself a small, quiet smile. The fleet's presence was terrifying, but it also proved something remarkable. Fear alone could not break the human spirit. Even under fire, Earth had not abandoned its principles. Even under threat, humanity had chosen to act with love rather than hate. As night fell over Earth, lanterns and lights glimmered across the surface, a reflection of the stars above. Volunteers continued their work. Refugees rested in temporary shelters, and soldiers patrolled with calm vigilance. The first assault had not broken them. It had not made them falter. And for the first time, the alien fleet seemed to hesitate, as if uncertain how to respond to a world that did not react with fear, but with courage and care. In the quiet moments between alarms, Leora whispered to herself, "We may be small, we may be fragile, but we are not alone. Not anymore." The thought spread through her like a fire. One world, one small blue planet, had chosen to rise above fear and hate. And in doing so, it had reminded the galaxy of a truth long forgotten. Strength is measured not by weapons or walls, but by courage, compassion, and the willingness to protect the helpless. The first assault had ended for now, but the battle for hope was only beginning, and as Leora looked at the faces of children, refugees, and volunteers alike, she knew one thing clearly: Earth would not falter. Earth would stand, and in that stand, a new chapter for humanity, and perhaps the galaxy itself, was being written. The alien fleet lingered in orbit, their ships a silent threat above Earth. Days had passed since the first warning shots, yet Earth had not wavered. Refugees continued to arrive, civilians continued to care, and volunteers worked tirelessly to keep everyone safe. At first, the fleet commanders had expected fear, hesitation, maybe even surrender. What they saw instead unsettled them. A world refusing to yield, a civilization that fought with kindness rather than weapons. In the central command station, Leora Vance monitored incoming transmissions. Reports poured in from across the planet, children sharing food with alien friends, engineers teaching refugees to repair damaged shuttles, medics treating injuries from both human and alien alike. Every act of compassion sent ripples of hope through the people of Earth and unknowingly across the galaxy. Even the fleet began to notice. Sensors picked up data that they had not accounted for. Humans rescuing aliens from drifting ships, volunteers tending to the wounded, children laughing despite the chaos around them. These were not signs of weakness. They were signs of strength, a different kind of power, one that could not be destroyed by missiles or lasers. The first reports from distant systems began to reach the Council of Worlds. They watched in disbelief as images of Earth's actions spread. Planets that had once mocked humanity now hesitated. Zephyrian elders sent messages of gratitude and admiration. Scientists on other worlds began sharing knowledge, inspired by the collaboration between humans and refugees. Slowly, the galaxy began to ask itself a question it had not considered in centuries. Could compassion be stronger than fear? On Earth, life continued despite the looming threat. Refugees and humans worked together to expand shelters, repair orbital stations, and distribute supplies. Children played unafraid, sharing games across species. In makeshift classrooms, humans and aliens learned from one another, discovering new ways to solve problems and create beauty in the midst of chaos. Leora watched it all, her heart swelling with pride. Every day she saw hope take shape, and it was stronger than she had imagined. One evening, as Earth's twin moons rose over New Chicago, a young Zephyrian girl handed a glowing crystal to a human boy. "For courage," she said softly. The boy smiled, holding it close. Leora observed the scene from the observation deck and felt something she had not expected. A deep, almost overwhelming certainty that humanity had started a change that could not be undone. Meanwhile, the alien fleet began to retreat slightly, their commanders unsure how to respond to a planet that did not fight in the ways they expected. They had come prepared to intimidate and conquer. Yet what they encountered was something far more unsettling. A species that protected the helpless, even at the cost of its own safety. Some ships returned to their home systems to study Earth's actions further, unsure if resistance through fear was still effective. Galactic news channels, previously dominated by fear and propaganda, began to broadcast images of Earth's people and refugees working together. Messages of hope spread to distant worlds, inspiring those who had once turned away to reconsider. Slowly, doors that had been slammed shut began to creak open, as civilizations remembered that unity and compassion could be stronger than walls and weapons. Leora walked through the orbital refuge hub one night, watching as humans and aliens repaired ships and shared meals. She paused by a group of children, laughing as they learned a game from a different world. In that laughter, she felt a profound truth. Hope was contagious. Courage shared openly could move hearts even across the stars. The tide was turning, not because of weapons, fleets, or force, but because one small planet had chosen to act differently. Earth had become a beacon, a reminder that fear need not rule the galaxy. Compassion, kindness, and courage had begun to rewrite the story of civilizations that had once retreated behind gates and walls. Leora looked at the stars, thinking of the countless ships still drifting, the countless lives still waiting for a hand to reach them. "We have started something," she whispered. "Something greater than any war, greater than any fear. The galaxy can still change. We can still change it," and so Earth continued. Ships arrived, families were saved, volunteers worked tirelessly, and children laughed freely. The alien fleet, once a symbol of imminent destruction, now hesitated, unsure how to strike a world that wielded compassion as its weapon. The seeds of hope had taken root, and the galaxy, once silent and fearful, began to listen. For the first time in generations, the stars seemed brighter, not because of firepower or conquest, but because one small world had chosen to show what it truly meant to be alive, to care, to protect, and to open one's arms when all others shut theirs. Humanity had not only survived, it had inspired, and from that inspiration a new future was beginning to bloom across the galaxy. Years passed, and the galaxy had begun to change. Earth, once a small blue planet overlooked by distant stars, had become a symbol of hope and courage. The alien fleet that had once threatened destruction now hovered in orbit with hesitation, unsure how to confront a world whose strength lay in compassion rather than weapons. Across the galaxy, civilizations that had once closed their gates began to question their choices, remembering the warmth of Earth's defiance against fear. Refugees no longer arrived as strangers, but as travelers returning home. Formerly isolated systems reopened trade routes, rebuilt connections, and welcomed one another with cautious optimism. Humanity's choice had sparked a movement, one that reminded the galaxy that fear was not the only path. The power to care, to protect, and to embrace was stronger than any fleet, stronger than any wall. On Earth, life had flourished despite the strain. Cities had expanded, shelters became permanent homes, and humans worked side by side with alien friends to build a world of collaboration and hope. Children laughed freely in parks, their games now a blend of dozens of cultures. Elders shared stories of survival and unity, and scientists collaborated across species to innovate in ways no single world could have imagined. Leora Vance stood on the highest observation tower in New Chicago, looking out at the bustling city below. Her eyes traced the orbiting ships that had once threatened Earth, and now carried refugees back to distant home worlds, safe and guided by volunteers trained in compassion and care. Tears blurred her vision, but she did not blink them away. For the first time in decades, the galaxy was remembering what it meant to be alive, not just to survive, but to protect, to nurture, and to hope. In the orbital refuge hub, children from dozens of species played together, teaching each other games, sharing songs, and laughing without fear. Leora watched a Zephyrian girl show a human boy how to float with gravity boots, while a Tharnian elder told stories under the shade of artificial trees. It was a small scene, ordinary in one sense, but extraordinary in another. Life thriving against the backdrop of fear, hope triumphing where despair had once reigned. The Council of Worlds convened once more. This time their message was not one of warning, but of acknowledgement. Planets that had once shuttered themselves now opened their gates, offering aid, accepting refugees, and learning from Earth's example. The galaxy had remembered that unity could be stronger than fear, and that compassion could move even the hardest hearts. Leora received a transmission from a distant world, a message simple in words but profound in meaning. "Earth taught us how to be better. Thank you." She smiled, the corners of her mouth trembling with emotion. This was the reward not of conquest, but of courage and love. The galaxy was listening, and it was beginning to follow a new path. Even the alien fleet that had once threatened annihilation now hovered quietly, their commanders observing Earth's people not as enemies, but as a civilization that had taught the universe a lesson it had forgotten. That true strength lies not in domination, but in protection, kindness, and unity. Ships departed for other worlds, carrying messages, supplies, and the knowledge that hope could never be silenced once it was shared. On the streets of New Chicago, humans and aliens gathered for a festival celebrating life, survival, and compassion. Music and laughter filled the air. Children danced under lights of every color, their faces painted with joy. Families shared meals, strangers became friends, and a sense of belonging spread across the city like sunlight after a long, Cold night. Leora walked through the crowds, hand in hand with a young refugee girl who had once feared she would never see safety again. She saw volunteers guiding elderly aliens to their seats, doctors checking on everyone with care, and neighbors exchanging gifts and stories from their home worlds. Every small act, every gentle word, every shared smile was proof that Earth's choice had not only saved lives, but had changed hearts. Finally, as the twin moons rose over the horizon, casting silver light over the planet, Leora looked to the stars. Ships glinted in orbit, distant planets shone faintly, and somewhere out there countless lives continued because Earth had chosen to act when all others had retreated. The galaxy had been cold, silent, and fearful, but one small world had opened its arms, and in doing so, it had reminded the universe what it truly meant to be alive. For the first time in generations, the stars themselves seemed to respond. They twinkled with the light of countless civilizations choosing hope over fear, unity over division, and love over indifference. Humanity had not only survived, it had inspired. It had proven that compassion was a force stronger than weapons, that courage was measured by what one protects rather than what one destroys. Leora whispered to the night sky, her voice soft but filled with certainty. We did not just open our gates. We opened our hearts, and the galaxy remembered what it means to be alive. The festival continued below, laughter and music carrying far into the night. Children of all worlds ran together under the lights, holding hands, sharing joy, and dreaming of a future where every world could open its arms. And above them, Earth shone like a beacon, small but brilliant, fragile but unbreakable. A reminder to all the stars that hope, courage, and compassion could truly change the universe.